Okay, guys, we've been looking a lot at the preliminary skills to get us in a position to start throwing people. Remember what the ultimate goal of this first video in the Feet to Floor series is. It's to get you throwing resisting opponents who are your own size and your own skill level within 3 to 6 months. As such, the first skills of takedowns in front of an opponent, which I've chosen for you, have a particular kind of vibe to them. The first is that we have to understand different takedowns have different degrees of difficulty. Okay, some takedowns are somewhat easier to perform than other takedowns, and there are mechanical reasons for this. Understand that different takedowns have different degrees of amplitude. You can throw someone with less force or more force. Most grappling styles reward you for increasing amplitude. The harder and faster you throw someone, the more points you get. Jiu-Jitsu does not make this. In Jiu-Jitsu, every takedown scores the same, regardless of amplitude. The smallest trip scores the same as the biggest throw. Because of this, Jiu-Jitsu tends to favor the more conservative, smaller amplitude takedowns. These takedowns are typically easier to perform for most people. So, for example, a high amplitude takedown, I'll demonstrate drop Tai Toshi, okay? From a situation where I have a grip on a training partner and lapel grip like so, and I've done a good job getting my opponent squared up. In drop Tai Toshi, we're going to move in front of our training partner, block our training partner's leg, and throw with amplitude straight down to the mat, okay? This throw involved quite a few things at the same time. It involved the notion of a dominant grip, okay? If my opponent had a grip on me, I had to have the inside undergrip, like so. And as a result, I was able to move his elbow out of my way and start to gain distance on my opponent. It required a second hand on my opponent, okay? So we had a dominant grip situation. I had an ability to turn his shoulders and get his head out of position. I had an ability to draw his weight onto his toes. And because all of those things were satisfied, I was able to turn almost 180 degrees from the initial step and drive my man down to the floor. Okay? So you can see there was a lot of things going on there. I had to get a dominant grip. I had to generate motion and attain a certain kind of position on my opponent. I had to get him out of balance, had to break his balance forwards. I had to be able to turn 180 degrees and throw the man. Now, that looked easy because he's not resisting. But if he's resisting, believe me, that's going to be a difficult task. Most of the difficulty came from the idea of the prerequisite skills leading up to a breaking of balance and then a turn of 180 degrees in front of him to throw him forwards with amplitude. Now, let's contrast that with another takedown. I'm going to demonstrate ankle pick, Kibisuke Eishi, okay? In Kibisuke Eishi, I don't have to turn my body at all. I'm facing my opponent the whole time. So it's one of the most difficult parts of takedowns. The turn in front of your opponent is removed. So the degree of difficulty goes down. Physically, it's a much easier takedown to perform. So for example, if we have a man here in front of us, he's got grips on us and we've got grips on him, and we snap the grip off, generate motion, we come into a good attacking position just like so. I didn't have to turn on my opponent. And as a result, when I pull on my training partner's foot, it's relatively easy for us to put the leg up and end up in good position, okay? So mechanically, it was an easier takedown because I didn't have to turn, and the breaking of balance was so much easier. All I had to do was hang off my opponent's collars to break the balance. I didn't have to draw him onto his toes, and while I'm turning, all those complicated things involved big forward throws. You could see there was much less amplitude in the throw. He didn't go crashing to the floor, he just tripped down to his ass. But in Jiu-Jitsu, they score the same, okay? So the first takedowns that I'm going to show you, I want you to be scoring on opponents, your own size, your own skill level, within 3 to 6 months. So I'm showing you an initial curriculum of moves with a degree of difficulty is taken down. I've carefully selected moves which are relatively easy to perform. I'm not going to say they're easy, they're easier. Okay, you're not going to have to be able to jump, spin, and move 180 degrees in a quarter of a second and throw your opponent with amplitude. All you're going to have to do is sag them down to the mat with moves that don't take a huge amount of skill. Okay, so that's our first consideration, degree of difficulty. I'm choosing the throws which are on the lower threshold of degree of difficulty as your first takedowns, so that in 3 to 6 months, you can be putting resisting opponents down to the mat. Second thing, I'm going to choose moves which minimize the risk of failure. Let's understand something. When you go to take people down, it's going to be just like all your submission attempts on the floor. You're not going to succeed every time. Okay, don't think that every time you attempt a takedown, you're going to take somebody down. It doesn't work that way, any more than every time you try to submit someone, you submit them. Okay, if you're batting 15 to 20%, you're doing pretty well. Okay, understand that on at least half the occasions you attempt takedowns on someone your own size and skill level, you're going to fail. So that's a big deal in jiu-jitsu, because sometimes if you fail with a given technique, the price of failure in jiu-jitsu is pretty high. Let's look at, say, for example, drop seoi-nage, okay? From a situation where my training partner comes out and makes grips, and we go right versus right, we snap his grip off, and I start to draw my training partner into a throwing situation, okay? If I go into an initial drop seoi-nage in this position and throw my body inside my training partner's legs, just like so, if things fail from here and I don't break his balance sufficiently, as he goes to pull back on me in this situation, I feel my throat get crushed. Now, you've just started the match and he's right on your back, okay? The price of failure was very, very high. In the sport of jiu-jitsu, there's no one to save you now. In the sport of judo, if I'm in here and the throw fails and my opponent takes it out and we go down to the floor, all I have to do is survive for 3 to 4 seconds here. If he can't get in and get in a serious attack on in a short period of time, the referee's going to come in and save me. In jiu-jitsu, the referee's not going to save you. The match has barely started and you've got a guy on your back, ready to strangle, ready to score 4 points on you. Okay? So the price of failure in jiu-jitsu is much higher than it is in other grappling sports. Okay? In judo, as I said, the rules and the referee will protect you there. In jiu-jitsu, no one's going to come to save you. You've got to save yourself now. If you are batting 50% with Ippon Seoi-nage, that's terrible news. That means for every time you get a successful throw and score 2 points, in the other situation, your opponent gets 2 hooks in and strangles you. Okay, that's a terrible batting average. So it's natural that you'd be kind of leery about using a move like that. You'd be a little nervous unless you were very, very good at the application of it. So that's probably not the wisest throw to use as your first throw in the standing position. I will be teaching you Ippon Seoi-nage and Morote Seoi-nage later on. I want you to get good at them. But as your first throw, it's kind of a tall order because there's a lot of there's a high risk associated with failure. Let's go further into understanding the notion of risk in takedowns in jiu-jitsu, okay? The first form of risk is the one we just looked at, and that is back exposure. If I come in on a training partner using any one of the various throws that we favor in standing position, and I come in and there's a failure on the part of my entry and throw, this is back exposure. And back exposure in jiu-jitsu is a terrible, terrible thing. In judo, it's not bad at all. In sambo, it's not so bad. Even in wrestling, it's not the worst thing in the world. In jiu-jitsu, it's an unmitigated disaster, okay? So the throws that I'm going to show you minimize back exposure, okay? These are your initial throws. Later on, we'll look at throws where there is some back exposure, but there's a reward of increased amplitude. Okay, so you're always going to trade off between amplitude and back exposure. The more amplitude in the throw, the more you're going to have to go into hard mechanical turns where you can throw people with power. It's going to require you to turn your back on your opponent. As you increase your skill level, you can start doing that safely. But in your first few days in the sport, your first few months, that can be a risky thing to start with. Second thing is neck exposure. Okay, here's a common move taken from wrestling and often applied by beginners in jiu-jitsu. We have an opponent here in front of us and we hit the standard wrestling method of attacking our training partner and come into a sweep single down on the mat. Okay, now my neck's exposed. As I come up off the floor, he puts in a loop strangle. Comes in and takes the loop. Now I'm in a loop strangle. He goes to apply it and we're in deep trouble now. Okay, I exposed my neck as I came up on my opponent using a standard wrestling setup, which is appropriate for wrestling, but gets you in trouble with a gi on in ways where your neck gets exposed, okay? So the first problem is back exposure. That's the most serious problem. Second problem is neck exposure. We want to try and minimize neck exposure to the greatest degree possible, Okay. Third problem is belt exposure. Okay. When you do jiu-jitsu, you got a belt on. That's a serious problem. If my training partner gets a hold of my belt in this position, he can throw with tremendous power because the belt controls my center of gravity and puts me onto my toes. Okay. So when someone takes the belt in this situation, it's a serious problem. They can throw me like so, or they can go in sumigeshi like so and cause problems for me. So if I hit a standard form of single leg using a wrestling-based setup instead of a jiu-jitsu-based setup, let's say, for example, we're in here, I come in and lock up. He gets my belt, and when I come up, oh no, I get thrown with sumigeshi. I get thrown with uchimata. And we're in serious trouble here, okay? Because he generated belt exposure. I want to do things that minimize back exposure, minimize neck exposure, and minimize belt exposure, okay? Another big problem we have is roll-through exposure, okay? A common problem in high-amplitude throws is the problem of roll-throughs. If he puts a hand on my back, like so, he's got a grip on me. So when I come in and I hit a high-amplitude throw, like say, for example, Taitoshi, okay? I come in and take him over, he rolls me through, and it didn't end well. I hit a nice throw, but it didn't end well. In jiu-jitsu, the only throws that score are those that end well, with me in controlling position on top, okay? In judo, that throw would have won me the match, okay? In jiu-jitsu, it would have only scored you, I think, actually wouldn't have scored you anything. I don't believe in an advantage in that case because I ended in poor position. In Sambo, if I throw someone and they fall and I don't, so we get a perfect throw in Sambo, I throw my opponent around the corner and I hit, say for example, Taitoshi, he goes down and bounces back up to his knees, the match is over in Sambo because I threw him flat on his back and I remained standing. So that's a perfect throw in Sambo. In Jiu-Jitsu, that scored an advantage, no points, because I didn't control him, he stood back up. Okay, so you can see that roll-through is a real problem in jiu-jitsu. And the more high amplitude my throw, the more problems we have with roll-through, okay? The more I commit to the forward position and we start driving opponent over, the more this becomes an issue, okay? Now let's contrast that with low amplitude throws, okay? A low amplitude throw, there's very little risk of roll-through, okay? So for example, from here, we take our training partner over, and we go in and put him down. There's very low risk of roll through. He tries to roll me through from here. It's impossible. Okay, he's going to end up in top position. Okay, so as a general rule, there's a relationship between amplitude and roll through exposure. The more amplitude we put into a throw, the more danger there is of being rolled through and not scoring. So jiu-jitsu tends to favor low amplitude throws, or takedowns, which exhibit control after the throw. Remember, in jiu-jitsu, it's not the throw that counts. It's the position 3 seconds after the throw that count. That's what scores in jiu-jitsu. In judo, the throw counts. In sambo, the throw counts. In wrestling, the throw counts. In jiu-jitsu, the position 3 seconds after the throw. That's what counts. So we have to be very careful of this notion of roll-through exposure. Okay, so once again, we have to be very careful in jiu-jitsu. The prime thing we're careful of is back exposure. Okay, so I come in on my training partner and I come into a position where my back is exposed. This is terrible. Okay, he throws hooks in, etc., etc. It's just a nightmare. Okay, I have to be very careful of neck exposure. I come in unguarded, and here he comes up into a loop strangle. Now my neck's exposed. Okay, I have to be careful of belt exposure. I come in on a training partner, he gets my belt, I come up and I get thrown with uchimata, for example, sumigeshi, what have you. Okay, because I exposed my belt to my opponent. Roll through exposure. I throw an opponent from here, he goes over, and we get rolled on through. Okay, and now you ended up in a bad position. You didn't really score anything. The other big thing is the idea of degree of difficulty, okay? We want to favor throws in which the degree of difficulty is taken down by taking away big, difficult movements like turning 180 degrees in front of an opponent, which is a difficult thing to do when someone's strongly resisting you, when they've got stiff arms on you like so. And turning in front of them is hard work. It's like, oh my God, it's difficult, Okay, if we can cut down these problems, back exposure, neck exposure, belt exposure, roll through exposure, the degree to which we have to turn our body 180 degrees to make a throw, then we can select a small group of throws which are relatively simple, where the degree of difficulty comes down and at the same time the risks of failure come down. And that's when you can start attacking people pretty quickly and start throwing people, taking them down within 3 to 6 months without a problem. We're looking at a range of takedowns which we believe are particularly suitable for the sport of jiu-jitsu. They may not score in other styles of grappling, but in jiu-jitsu they can certainly score, which are relatively low skill level. Someone who's beginning their journey in the standing position can start to perform in a relatively short time frame. They have a relatively low degree of difficulty, so you can get these to operate pretty quickly. Our intention in this first video in the Feet to Floor series is to get you taking down opponents in competitive situations who are your own size and your own skill level within 3 to 6 months. I believe that's a perfectly workable goal if we follow this initial program. As we go further into the Feet to Floor series, I'm going to start showing you more and more complex takedowns where you get more amplitude upon your opponent. You get a more spectacular looking throw. But these do require a higher skill level, and they will take you a little longer to learn. But initially, I just want you to be effective in the standing position in the first 3 to 6 months. Okay, as I said, there's throws for further down the line where it may take you considerably longer than that to gain expertise in them. But I don't want you to have to wait 5 years to be able to take someone down. I want you to take someone down in a competitive situation in 3 to 6 months. And these first takedowns that we're looking at in this first in the volume of Feet to Floor are designed to get you doing exactly that. Of the various takedowns that I'm showing you, it's my personal belief, and I believe the belief of many other people too, that the collar drag, a variation of an old school judo and jiu-jitsu takedown, ukiwaza, which is the one you're most likely to score with. So I want to spend quite a bit of time on this because I believe it's the takedown which most beginning students in jiu-jitsu have the most success with when they start off their standing journey. I also believe it has a special property in that the collar drag is a takedown where someone who gets into standing combat with an opponent who has a higher skill level overall in the standing position than they do can be taken down by a lesser opponent with this simple but effective method. To summarize this, someone who's good in the standing position can take down someone who's great in the standing position with a collar drag. It's not a particularly difficult move to put into operation. And as I said, if you hit it quickly and confidently, you can realistically expect to take down someone who's actually overall better than you in the standing position. So it's absolutely the one we should be focusing on perhaps the most out of all these takedowns we've been looking at in this first video. You guys know that I tend to grade the applicability of a takedown for the sport of jiu-jitsu along various lines. The first, if you just stand up, Giancarlo, the first question I always ask is, how much back exposure is involved in the use of this takedown? Okay, the more back exposure, the less I like the takedown. So there are many forms of takedown where the good news is they generate tremendous amounts of amplitude, but the bad news is they generate huge amounts of back exposure. So for example, Seoi-nage variations, okay? If I come in on a training partner and here I hit an Ippon Seoi-nage, yes, this is a potentially very strong throwing position, but it's also a potential disaster based on the amount of back exposure here. If I don't do a good job of exploding and lifting underneath my training partner's body weight and coming off the floor and committing downwards, my opponent will stuff the takedown and we end up in a critical situation down on the mat where not only have I failed with the takedown, but I've completely exposed my back to my opponent. And as a result, the match now might be in the first minute. I've got to survive now for 9 minutes in a situation where he's probably going to score 4 points and is now in the perfect position to strangle me. The referee's not going to come to my help. I've got to dig myself out of that grave. So the less back exposure we generate, the happier we are in the sport of jiu-jitsu. Next big problem is neck exposure. Okay, if I start coming in on an opponent with my neck in front of him, it's only a matter of time till he covers the head, and now he's got guillotines and loop strangles. We can really mess things up for you and make it very difficult for you to finalize the score. Another big problem we have in the sport of jiu-jitsu is belt exposure. If I come into a single leg situation, like so, okay, and I expose my belt to my opponent, as I come up off the floor, I can get countered very strongly with forward throws like uchimata or sacrifice throws like sumigation. Okay, so I don't want to expose my belt to my opponent too much. Considerations like these are the things that guide our selection for takedowns applicable to the sport of jiu-jitsu. There's other elements too, and one of them is degree of difficulty. If it's going to take you 10 years to learn and perfect a given throw, that's a huge investment in training time. Now, in jiu-jitsu, let's be honest, 90% of our training time is on the ground. And the reason is because 90% of the scores are made on the ground. So it's natural that the majority of our training time should reflect where most of the scoring is done. If a throw is going to take a huge investment in training time to perfect, it's got to be worth it. It's got to be worth the sweat and the toil that you put into it. The disappointing thing is you could spend 10 years perfecting a difficult throw, and as soon as you finally get good at it, your opponent always has the option of just pulling guard on you, so you never actually get to use it in jiu-jitsu. So there's something to be said for favoring takedowns which have a low degree of difficulty that you can perfect in a relatively short time frame. And ukiwaza, the collar drag, is exactly that. Now, the other big consideration that I want you thinking in terms is the idea of an overlap takedown. Overlap takedowns are takedowns which have applicability both in standing position and also on the ground. The collar drag is exactly that. Let's say, for example, I have a training partner standing over me and he goes in for a common Toreando type grip on my pants. You can hit collar drags here all day. I get a hold of my training partner's cross collar, I put my foot in the outside position, and from here as I move across, I just trip my training partner's opposite foot, and we put him down with a collar drag. If he's on two knees in front of me, again, same thing. We're here working, I take my grip, my body faces out to the east, I position my foot here in front of his knee, and as I slide out, I face the opposite way out to the west, and we hit a nice collar drag to put our man down. So you can see that there's a big overlap between collar dragging on the ground versus collar dragging on the feet. It's essentially the same movement. Now, jiu-jitsu players do 90% of their training on the floor. You can practice your collar drags every time you train on the floor without a problem. It's not a difficult thing. It's not much of a stretch to go from that skill to the standing skill. Okay? So I generally tend to favor overlap takedowns that have applicability in both ground and standing, because most jiu-jitsu players have an easy time conceptually with these. They already do them on the floor. It's not asking a lot to just perform the same move in the standing position. Secondly, it doubles or triples the amount of live sparring experience you gain with those moves, because you're already using them every day down on the mat. It's easy for you now to come up and start using them in standing position because you've got that sparring time behind you where you're doing roughly the same move, either on the floor or standing. Okay? These are the reasons why I favor the collar drag so much as your first big point scoring move in the standing position. Let's just give just a quick look at the collar drag right now, and then we're going to start going into the fine details very shortly. The basic idea for most collar drags, as we just saw down on the floor, is essentially the same in the standing position. In jiu-jitsu, most of the opponents tend to stand in bent over stances like so. Okay, this is the perfect time to go into collar drags. The reason is because if Giancarlo gets a hold of me, he can sit to guard at any time. Okay, all he needs to do is get a grip on me. He's not allowed to sit to guard with no grip. This is not allowed. Okay, but if he gets a grip on me, he can sit down anytime he wants. So commonly in jiu-jitsu, players tend to come out in bent over stances where they play a distance game, because they know if they get a hold of each other, they can make a sit to the floor. Okay, so typically there's a distance game where they won't let each other get a grip. If he moves towards me, I might move away, like so, and we'll play at distance. I'm worried about Giancarlo shooting on my legs, so typically the stances tend to be relatively low. Most opponents are interested in sitting towards the floor if they can't get a takedown, so this is the standard situation. Okay, and it's from situations like this that collar drags work so extraordinarily well. From a situation where we start off, I just pass the wrist to the center line. My second hand comes in, it becomes a cross collar grip. Okay, facing the camera. Typically, we go cross collar as opposed to straight collar. Now, there are variations of this that I promise you I'll look at different grips, but 90% of the time when we work here, it's going to be a cross collar grip. Okay, so from here, we come in, we get the wrist. I take the hold of the cross collar grip and I start a sit that puts our 3 feet in a straight line. What I don't want to do is hit my foot and body in front of him and try to slide to my butt and just pull my opponent on top of me. Then it just degenerates into a guard pull. Okay, it's not a disaster, but it's not what you wanted. You wanted to take it down. You don't want to pull guard. Okay, so what's going to be required here is the idea of a step to the outside. Okay, now facing the camera in color. From this position, there's going to be a slide where I either touch the far foot or I slide inside the near leg. I promise you I'll come back to that point very soon. And then from this position, we start an initial slide action that puts my opponent's body down to the floor. From here, I keep my head higher than his hips. I don't want to come down to the mat. I don't want his head higher than my head. I don't want his hips higher than my hips. I want my body up and weight on the man with a stiff arm action. And this is going to give us an option of either going to the leg or going to the hip. And this is the basic idea behind a collar drag. You can see there's a direct relationship between the ground and the standing position. Okay, cross collar grip, foot goes on and blocks, and from this position, I turn one way and then slide in the opposite way. Okay, essentially the same thing. In standing position, we grip, and there's the same movement applied. It's not much of a stretch to go from standing to ground and vice versa. Okay, so those are the reasons why we favor it. That's the basic idea behind a collar drag or ukewaza. Now let's start to go into the fine details. It's going to allow you to start throwing, or at least taking people down with this move consistently, who are your own size and your own skill level within 3 to 6 months. Now, one of the big themes of this video has been the division between our two hands as a power hand and a control hand. And we've seen as we go to work that the power hand is locked to my training partner's torso. Okay, and it can be a range of different positions. It can be straight, it can be cross, it can be over the shoulder, it can be under the arm, it can be over the arm, all the way to the belt, etc. It connects to my opponent's torso. And this stands in contrast to a control hand, which goes to my training partner's arm. Okay, often it's the sleeve cuff, like so. Sometimes it's the tricep, like so. Every so often, it can be over a shoulder or even opposite lapel, like so, when we use double lapel grips, but that's a little more unusual. The basic division is between an arm that controls the torso and an arm that controls the sleeve. Power hand, control hand. Okay. In the case of ukewaza, things are a little bit different. You do have a power hand and you do have a control hand, but their function is a little different. Okay. The power hand doesn't change too much. It's still the idea of locking onto my training partner's upper body and creating a pulling force that controls my training partner's head. As always with the power hand, the idea is to draw his head beyond his base of support and create an off-balancing forwards. As the head goes forward past the line of the toes, it creates an off-balance forward that my opponent has to recover from. Okay. In the case of a collar drag, it's even easier by the fact that you're literally dropping to the mat. And so your falling body weight will create a situation that's very, very easy to commit a strong forward breaking of balance down to the mat. Okay. So that part is pretty easy. But the control hand is a little different in the case of collar dragging. Normally, if we come close to the camera, Giancarlo, normally the idea behind a control hand is that it first takes away his ability to grab me. Okay, that doesn't change. But normally what a control hand does is it rotates my training partner's shoulders. Okay, and as the shoulders rotate, that's when we can start throwing people in a forwards direction. Okay, That changes in the case of a collar drag. Now, the function of my control hand is not to rotate his shoulders. The function of the control hand when we go to collar drag is to make sure my opponent's hand never wraps around my body. It takes the hand and passes it across the body. That's its function. Okay? If I hit a collar drag and Giancarlo's hand goes to this side of my body as I hit the drag, it's a failure. I've pulled guard. It's not a complete disaster because there's still things you can do here. It's not a bad position to go into attacks, omoplatas, etc. But it's not what you were looking for. You were looking to score a takedown here, not a guard pull. So the function of the control hand is to make sure his hand never goes across my torso and covers the torso. The idea of the control hand is to guide this hand through so that we get back exposure and leg exposure. Okay, so a little different from a normal throwing situation. Now, you got two ways to do this, and they're both damn good. You can do it with a cuff grip. That's the strongest method, but it's also a little slow because you have to get the actual 3-finger grip in on your opponent. And the second method is just the wrist, where I just pass my training partner's wrist and hold the wrist. That's faster, but not as strong. My opponent can yank away from a wrist grip, but it's very hard for them to yank away from a cuff grip. Okay, so you've got a choice here between a stronger, slower grip versus a weaker, faster grip. That is a choice you'll have to make. There's good and bad to both, obviously. It's a trade-off here. But the basic idea always remains the same. Once we go in with our training partner and we get our first grip, either here or here, the whole idea is to pass the control hand across the body. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate it now with a wrist grip. So let's say I started, for example, we were in a position like so, and I had just the cross grip in place. As I make this step, I just hold on to my training partner's wrist, and there we get our collar drag out to the side, and we're ready to play. Okay. Conversely, I could start with the cuff. Let's say, for example, he came in and made a grip, and I shook it off. Okay. I danced to an angle. Now I'm in the perfect position to put the hand in. I step out to the side, cover, and we're ready to play. Okay? So that's how control hand and power hand cooperate with each other, get good results when we work with the collar drag. Now we're looking at the precise mechanics of a good collar drag ukewaza down to the mat. I truly want you guys to become very, very proficient at the collar drag. I truly believe that when you first start out the standing game, it can all seem a little bit nerve-wracking to you if you've been doing nothing but mat work your entire jiu-jitsu career. Now suddenly you got to go out there and take people down from the standing position. You got a competition coming up. It's like, oh, this is going to be your best friend. Okay, it's not a difficult move. It's closely related to moves you're already doing down on the ground. So it's not much of a stretch just to do the same thing in the standing position. Of all the various takedowns that we've looked at, it's probably the lowest skill level. It's the safest. There's almost nothing to go wrong with it. If you completely screw it up, it just turns into a guard pull. Not a bad thing in jiu-jitsu. So I really want you to get good at this move. Okay, we just looked at the handwork of a good collar drag, and we saw that we have a power hand that goes in on our training partner. We have a control hand that guides the hand across. Okay, and between those two hands, we get a good pull down to the floor to our side. Okay, now it's important you understand the leg work. If you got the hand work down, now you got to get the leg work. You've got two great options. Okay, one is to block the far foot here. Okay, to go all the way across. This makes it a true ukewaza. Okay, ukewaza is a takedown where I block the far foot and commit my body to the ground. Okay, the second is a single slide where I don't go all the way, maybe because he's standing so far out like so. I just put my foot in the middle and I focus on the single leg that's closest to me. Okay, now it's a natural thing for you to ask, is one better than the other? The ukewaza has a greater tripping effect. Okay, it tends to slam people and face plant them because you're tripping his leg to put him down. When you go the single leg slide, it tends to drag people down to the mat, but they're both damn good. Okay, and in truth, when the action's on and you've got a few seconds to hit a good takedown, most of the time what I do is I aim for the ukewaza And if I get it, good. And if I don't, it just automatically becomes a single leg slide, and they both work pretty well. Okay. Now, one consideration here is height. If Giancarlo and I line up with the camera, Giancarlo is a little taller than me, nothing crazy, but he's a little taller than me. And as a result, the taller your opponent is over you, the more you'll tend to go for single leg slides. And the taller you are, the more success you'll have with your reach to make it into true ukawaza. Okay, so we're going to stand in front of our training partner like so, and I notice the stance is relatively narrow, so I'm going to focus here on an ukawaza. I go up towards my training partner, I get my grips, and I step out to the side, and I place my foot all the way through, and I get a good trip down to the mat. Okay, as a result, my head and body is upright, and now we're in a good position to go forward and get to our training partner's far hip. Now, this time my training partner is going to stand in an exaggerated wide stance. So it's going to be pretty hard for me to get someone as tall as Giancarlo and get to that far foot with an ukawaza. Okay? Under these circumstances, I might well be advised go to a single leg slide, where I just take my foot between his and I just slide down to the mat like so. I made no contact with the far leg, but it was enough to bring him down to hands and knees. And then from here, just like before, we go through looking for the far hip. Okay? So once again, the basic choice is between an ukawaza, where I try deliberately to block the far foot, versus a single leg slide, where I use my hamstring and knee to block the near foot. So it's either my hamstring blocks the near foot, or my foot blocks the far foot. This one's a little stronger, but it's a little harder to get on people taller than yourself or with very wide stances. This one's a little less efficient mechanically, but it's good enough to get the job done, and it's a lot easier to perform. Okay, so that's your basic choice. So once again, if we face this way, Giancarlo, so they can see the leg work, we come up towards our training partner, and from here I hit ukawaza, making contact all the way across to the far foot. Okay, nice and strong contact to the mat. This time, I feel maybe that's beyond me, the reach is a little too far, so I come out, and from here I go single leg slide, get almost as good a result, and now we're in perfect position to go to the hip or the leg. Okay, so that's your basic leg choice between an ukawaza tripping the far foot versus a single leg slide where I use my leg to block the near foot. Now we're looking at ukawaza, the collar drag, as one of the premier methods of getting your standing game started in a good solid direction and getting you effectively taking people down in a short time frame in competitive situations in the standing position. One of the key features of a good collar drag is the idea of a heavy hand on the cross lapel. A lot of people focus on the drag. That's good. It's an important part of the move. But the really key element of the heavy hand is after the drag, where I stiff arm my opponent and I use a commitment of my body weight on a stiff arm to prevent his head from coming up. A key point behind a good collar drag is you want to finish with your head higher than his head. If you don't keep head height advantage, it's very hard for you to score off the move. You need your head nice and high and his head nice and low. The greater the discrepancy between the height of your head and the height of his, the easier it is to score. Okay? So the only way we can do this is by taking his cross collar, bringing it down and stiff arming. I don't want to come down with a bent arm. I want to come down with a stiff arm with my hand, like so, pushing down so I can come up and keep my head over his. So as we move out towards the training partner, I go in on my training partner like so. I hit my drag, and I come down to the floor. I look back towards him, and I put my arm stiff. So when Giancarlo goes to face me, he runs into resistance. If my arm is bent, he can turn and face me. It turns into a scramble. I've exposed his back. That's good, but I need to keep it exposed. It's no good me slacking off. He goes to move his hips away from me. We go into a scramble, and we're right back into a scramble situation. He can face me. What I need to do here is hang heavy, make a strong body, Giancarlo. I hang heavy. So when he goes to face me, it's difficult. When he goes to put me back in guard, I get the height advantage. If he goes to guard now, I score 2 points for the takedown because I'm on top. We started neutral on the feet. He ends up on bottom. I get 2 points. So he can't really do that. Okay, that's not really his option. He can't sit to guard here. He's going to give up 2 points because we started with a takedown attempt. So what he has to do is try and get up to his feet to avoid conceding takedown points. As he does that, the head stays down and the hips come up. Hips come up, like so. As he goes to stand up, only the legs stand up. I'm going to get an opportunity to stand up, buddy. I'm going to get an opportunity now to run to his back. And from here, I can attempt secondary takedowns, put him back down to the floor, or I can throw my hooks in and score back points. Your choice, okay? So once again, we want a situation where once we're committed to the drag, I use the stiff arm. Your arm must lock out, and crucially, look at your own hand. Never look into your opponent this way. It's almost impossible for me now to put weight on my opponent. I must always look to the back of his head. That way my body is unified in the direction it has to go. If I look in this direction here or even across his hips, I'm losing power and the head starts to rise and cause problems. Everything's down here. Use your peripheral vision to put the hand in and score on the other side. Okay? Look where your hand goes. So there's unity between your drag hand and your head. If the hand and the head aren't unified, you always get a weak finish to the takedown. Eyes and hand unified, strong finish. So we move out towards our training partner. I come in and everything's unified in that direction. Okay? Guys, there's a phrase that you will hear me using all the time as a coach. Okay? And if you walk away from this video with only a few things to remember, this is one of those things I want you to remember. When you go to throw people and when you go to take them down, look where you want them to land. That's so important. I'm going to say it to you again. When you go for any kind of throw or any kind of takedown, look where you want them to land. When you look where you want them to land, you will unify your body mechanics in a very simple, very easily memorized way, which makes all of your movements more efficient. Ukawaza, or the collar drag, is no exception. When I hit the move, I know I want him to land there. That's the result that I'm looking for. When I hit the move, I look where I want him to land. So when he goes to face me, I'm unified mechanically. Now I can chase the leg or I can chase the hip. Okay? So that's how we get heavy hands. It keeps our opponent's head down and enables us to win the scramble. Guys, please remember, a lapel drag or a collar drag isn't really a throw at all. Okay? You're taking your opponent down to a turtle position. What it is a transition to the ground. You're only going to score if you dominate the position after he hits the ground. A collar drag is basically an entry into a scramble. If you dominate the conditions of the scramble, you'll score. If you don't, you won't score. So when we're here, when I hit a collar drag on an opponent, it creates a scramble situation. If I don't dominate it, he'll just scramble back and get up to his feet and he's gone. But if I keep the head down and my head up, now when we go to scramble, I'll be in a position to take a leg, I'll be in a position to chase the hips. And I can dominate the end of the scramble and get my point score. Look where your opponent is supposed to be landing. Keep your eyes and hand unified, and you'll dominate the end of the scramble and pick up your score. Now, we're looking at the mechanics of a good collar drag. One of the key elements is your head position relative to your opponent. I want my head high and I want his head low. Okay, let's look at the idea of the high head position whenever we go into collar dragging. Here's the most common reason why collar drags fail with beginning students. As they come out, they do a good job of guiding the hand pass. They do a good job of getting to their cross collar grip. They do a good job of sliding, but unfortunately, they go down to a shoulder. As a result, Giancarlo's head is higher than mine. He covers, and now you have to recover the guard. So essentially, you've created a guard pull. Okay. As I said, a guard pull is not a disaster. In fact, it's kind of encouraging to think that even if you completely screw up a collar drag, the worst that happens is you end up an open guard. So it's never going to be a disastrous result when you try a collar drag. Unlike, say, at Ippon Sanagi, where if you screw that up, that can be disastrous. But still, you wanted to score. You wanted to go out there and get your score in a standing position and get to a good position, okay? Never go down to a shoulder. If I ever slide, if you just stand with me, buddy. Stand. If I ever slide down to a shoulder, you lose head position. His head is higher than my head. All he has to do is cover me with his head, and I have to go to guard now, okay? The whole outcome here is about this. My head higher than his, and me controlling his head with the heavy hands that we talked about earlier, okay? That means I can never commit my shoulder to the mat. The lowest I will ever permit myself to fall is to an elbow. I will never fall to a shoulder. The elbow is the lowest, and this is even preferable, okay, where I don't even put my elbow on the mat. Sometimes you've got to go to an elbow, it happens. That's okay. You still got your head higher than his, okay? But the best of all is when we drag to the stiff arm. But one thing we'll never tolerate is dragging to a shoulder. It's unacceptable. We have to keep our head high. So the proper dynamic here is one where we start off in front of a training partner. I come through, and that's what we're looking for. That's the ideal. My head in line with his hips. If I go to an elbow, then my head must go to his shoulder here, okay? Still not bad. You can still do good work from here. I can throw an arm over and get to the far hip. I can get to my training partner's leg. It's still not bad. But if I go down to a shoulder, nothing good comes out of that. Your opponent will cover you, and you've got to go to guard, okay? So there's the rule of the head. Let's make sure that whenever we hit our slide takes us down to here, where we're sitting on a hip and either stiff arming or at the very most coming down to an elbow. But we will never tolerate going down to a shoulder. So that's the simple law of the high head position that'll make you effective scoring with the collar drag. You'll often hear me as a coach talking about the need to incorporate certain body movements in order to make a move efficient. Every move in Jiu-Jitsu is composed of various component body movements. And if you can't perform the body movements, the underlying body movements, then the move itself becomes very difficult to perform. There's really two keys to the collar drag. One is the sliding movement, where we move out to the side and slide our opponent down to the floor. But there is a second movement that no one ever talks about. This is the forward rock, okay? Once we're in a position where we've gotten heavy hands on our opponent, it's no good me sitting on my hip. You don't finish the takedown here. You don't score points in this position. You will only score points if you go into a second move called I'm calling it the forward rock. You can call it whatever you want, okay? In a forward rock, I go from the hip position and I close my foot to my other knee. I cannot sit up against my own foot. Your own foot will stop you getting up. So I have to close my foot to my knee, and my second leg comes over, and I transfer to a position where my hips are now higher than my training partner's hips, okay? Again, once we hit the slide and we've taken our opponent down, I can't just get up from this position. I have to fold and then bring my body over my knee and step up like so. Don't come up with both knees on the floor. Now his hips are going to be higher than your hips, and he's probably going to get away from you. Okay? So the first move is the slide. Everyone knows that one, but no one talks about the second critical body movement in a successful collar drag. And that is the forward rock, where we close the foot towards the opposite knee and we come up like so. I like to have my students drill this move solo, because it's actually harder to do it solo than it is with a partner. Because your partner actually gives you something to grab and get up. It's actually easier with a partner than it is solo. So what I have them do is first, I have them start in the drag position. No hands on the floor. You're not allowed to put hands on the mat. Okay? I put my hand out like so. My foot comes in, and I practice coming up. Okay? When you first start off, if you find this difficult, you're allowed to put a hand on the mat if your perhaps an older student, or you're not flexible, you just started out in jiu-jitsu, then from here, this will help make it a lot easier. You bring our foot in like so, and I come up to the high hip position. As you gain in confidence and flexibility and expertise, you're going to learn to do it without a hand on the mat. So from here, I hit the drag, I bring my foot down, and I forward rock. Now my hips are higher than his, and I'm ready to score. So if we have a training partner here in front of us, the first move in any collar drag is the slide. That's the obvious part of it. I go through and slide. And the next one, just turn your body this way, Giancarlo, is my foot coming up like so. Then I step, so my hip is higher than his hip. And as a result, I can take the back, or if he goes to stand up, I can take the leg. Okay? If I come up onto two knees, my hips are lower than his hips. When he stands up, head down, hips up. Now his hips are higher than my hips. I don't control him. Okay? So if he tripods from here in circles, he gets away from me. So the whole thing is to come up so that my hips are higher than his hips. When he tripods, I follow very easily and get my high hip position. Okay? So once again, I'll demonstrate it facing this way so you can see the action. The first move in every collar drag is the sit out, where I come in like so. But the second critical move is the forward rock. I close my foot to my own knee. I take my body, stand, high hip position, and we're ready to win the scramble at the end of the takedown and score. So that's the critical second body movement that you need to know to be successful scoring with a good collar drag. One thing you really need to be effective with your collar drag, so you can hit this in competition against an opponent who knows that you like it, knows what to expect, you got to have good body position, you got to have good angle. If I start in front of my training partner and my center line is lined up with his center line, you're pretty much condemning yourself to failure. Okay, you're going to pull your opponent on top of you. That's not what we want. What we want to do in any collar drag is pull my opponent's body behind me, like so. I want him going behind me. That's the intention of every collar drag. What I don't want to do is to line up and pull him on top of me. That's just a disaster. Okay? It's not a complete disaster because you essentially just pull guard. That's not what you're hoping to sort of take down, not pull guard. So the whole idea is we need an outside step and we need angle. Okay? If you just take a stance, buddy. Essentially what I want to do is put my foot outside his, and I want my foot pointing to the apex of a triangle that's behind Giancarlo's legs. Normally, the pyramid or the triangle we work with is the pyramid in front of our opponent. We have a base line between his 2 feet, and the pyramid is out here in front. In a collar drag, it's the exact opposite. We have a baseline between his feet, and we put the pyramid here behind him. And that's where I want my foot to point. Okay? So, when I come in front of my training partner, and I get my grips, my first step takes our 3 feet in a straight line. 1, 2, 3 on a line. If my foot is too far in front of his feet and we don't have a line, Giancarlo's chest, even as I hit the move, can point to my chest. If he can point his chest at my chest, he can stop the takedown. I never want Giancarlo to be able to point his chest at my chest. I want his chest pointed at the floor, not at me. The only way I can do this is to think of the pyramid behind his feet. When I come towards the man, I get my initial grip. I take my foot out wide and we line everything up 3 feet in a straight line. 1, 2, 3. Okay? Now, as Giancarlo goes to point his chest towards my cheek, it's too late. I'm pointing his chest at the floor. As a result, we're in the perfect position to come up with a forward rock, get our hips higher than his, and get to our score. Okay? So, we're going to demonstrate this with Giancarlo facing the camera. Right now, you cannot see Giancarlo. That means I'm in the wrong position. That means his chest is pointing at my chest. As I go into the move, you will see I've condemned myself to failure. Even if I do a good job passing his hand across, his chest points to my chest, and I just pull him on top of him. What we need is a situation where once we get our grips, you can see Giancarlo. Now, when I hit the move, it's just a matter of our 3 feet on a straight line. Even when he tries to get his chest facing one, it's too late. And my hand prevents the recovery. Stiff arm here. When he tries to point his chest at my chest, the stiff arm makes it difficult. Now the forward rock gives us height, and we're in perfect position now to go in and get our score. Okay? Now we're going to do it with Giancarlo facing the camera. If you can't see me, you know the move's going to fail. From your vantage point in the camera, you can already tell as a viewer that this move is about to fail because you can't see me. As a result, when I go into my slide, it's all done. It's no good. It's degenerated into a guard pull. What you need is to be able to see my body coming out here. Now it'll work. Now we curl the foot, forward rock, and score. Okay? Now we're going to do it facing this way. The 3 feet in a straight line. That's what we want. With 3 feet, 1, 2, 3 in a straight line, and my toes pointing at the apex of the pyramid, even as Giancarlo goes to turn and face me now, no way. Okay, we get a good position here. He goes to recover and face me with his chest, can't do it. Forward rock and score. Okay, so that's the critical element of angle. Now, you have to be able to get this angle in a pretty short time frame because no opponent is going to tolerate that kind of angle for any period of time. So what we need is to have in our minds the idea that once we get that angle, it's time to go. You don't have to set a speed record, but you don't procrastinate either, okay? Because I'm not going to be able to get an angle and keep it. He's going to turn and face, and we lost the angle, okay? So there's always a sense that once we get to that angle, don't fuck around, okay? It's time to go, okay? From this position, high hips, hand goes in, and we get our score. I'll say it again. You don't have to be the fastest guy in the gym, but you can't procrastinate either. Get your angle and go. We're engaged in a pretty interesting project. That project is to take the takedown method, which I believe is best suited for your beginning journey in the standing position. The takedown, which is lowest in skill level required, least risky. If things go wrong, nothing really bad happens. And one which you can hit on both sides of your body, as we will look at later on in this video. And this is the collar drag, or ukewaza. We're looking at the fine mechanical details that's going to make this move work in a competitive situation. And our goal is to get you confidently taking people down in the standing position, people who are your own size and your own skill level, within 3 to 6 months. This is a very doable goal. This is not unrealistic thinking, okay? I'm not asking you here to hit a single sleeve Tai Otoshi. I'm not asking you here to hit a beautiful Ken Uchimata. These are skills that are going to take you a long time to develop. But the skills we're looking at here are very manageable, very workable for an attentive student to start hitting in competitive sparring situations within 3 to 6 months. They're closely related to moves you're already using down on the ground. We're just modifying them for the standing position, okay? But you do need to know what you're doing and get those fine details. Okay, 3 targets for the collar drag. When we get into the collar drag situation, the primary 3 targets that we work with are going to be your opponent's knee, your opponent's far hip, and the combination of the two, where I go from the knee to the far hip. And which one I choose will be a little bit up to the situation in which we find ourselves, okay? So we're going to do this move with you there, Giancarlo, so you can kind of see them from an angle, okay? Actually, we'll switch it on this angle here, okay? As I come out towards my training partner and we hit the beginnings of the collar drag, there's different outcomes that can occur here. The first outcome is where Giancarlo goes to both of his knees. Looks like this. He's dropped to both of his knees. So that's the first outcome, okay? The second outcome is where he drops to both of his knees and he puts a leg up, probably so he can turn and face me, okay? That's also a very common outcome. So we hit the move, he bounces down to 2 knees, and then he puts his knee up. The reason he puts his knee up is so he can face me. And as he faces me, he can back away, circle, and we come up to neutral. Okay? So that too is a common outcome. The third very common outcome is where your opponent goes into a 4-point position. So he never goes to his knees, he goes to his hands. Okay? And this too is pretty common. We come in and he goes like this. Okay? So his knees never hit the ground. There is a fourth outcome, which does happen, especially when you're in a beginner class. That's where you have a clumsy opponent who goes down to a belly to the floor position. It's usually when you go with someone who perhaps is a little older or a little inexperienced in the standing position, and they just collapse to their stomach. We'll demonstrate it one time so you know what I'm talking about. Just fall down to your stomach, basically. Okay, so perhaps we've got a less experienced opponent. We come in, we hit the move, and this kind of thing happens. Okay, where you go spread eagle on the floor like this. Okay, now that's probably not going to happen with a more experienced opponent, but it can happen. So basically, there's 4 outcomes to a good collar drag, depending upon basically your opponent's skill level. So let's quickly look at them again. Okay, let's look first at the least experienced opponent. Maybe you're both beginners in jiu-jitsu and he's never seen a collar drag before, and we come out towards our training partner. We come in and he goes belly down. Okay, from here the target is always the far hip. Okay, there's no way he can win a scramble in this position. This is an awful scramble position for him, and it's a very good one for me because my head is high. I hit a forward rock and I put my elbow over the far hip. As he goes to get back up to his hands and knees, you're going to have a very easy time scoring. Here I've already scored 2 points for a takedown, and in truth I probably could have scored very easily 4 points for taking it back as he slowly got up from the belly position. Okay, so in a beginner class that might occur, but it's unlikely to occur with a more skilled opponent. More realistically, you're going to have opponents who go to 2 knees. Okay, when someone goes to 2 knees, my target is almost always the far hip. Okay, so if we come in on my training partner, let's face in this direction here. If I come in on my training partner and I hit my collar drag, he goes to his knees, I'm going to hit a forward rock and facing this way, Giancarlo, I'm going to cover my training partner's hips. My favorite thing initially to stop the scramble is just to put a thigh pry in. The thigh pry, I take my hand and I hook it into my training partner's thighs. Put your leg up, buddy. So my hand hooks in to the thigh. It functions almost like a leg hook. Okay, I like this grip. Put your knee back down because he can't hit a makikomi roll. Yeah, if I'm naive and I put my hand here on his chest, he can roll me and pin me. Okay, so you got to be careful putting your hand underneath someone's chest. They can hit you with a makikomi, and your takedown can end up being a bad outcome. Okay, so once again, from turtle position. Not the only way of doing things, but one good way of doing things is to put in a thigh pry, where I just put my hand in and lock it. When he goes for makikomi now, my wrist just isn't there. If I put my hand on his chest, now at the end of the takedown, he hits me with a makikomi and pins me. Okay? That's not the outcome we were looking for with the collar drag. So once again, we have an opponent who has better base, better balance, maybe a little more experience, and from here, he comes down to turtle position. I bring a forward rock, I cover his hips, and my hand goes in, and we're in a good position now to attack. If you just raise your chest, Giancarlo, I put cross hand in and lock, and a thigh pry. When we get into a scramble from a position like this, he tries to move away from me, it's going to be very, very hard. You're going to be able to take the back, get hooks in, score, and you're going to secure your takedown points. Okay? So that's one good option. There are other good options. That's one good one. When your opponent goes down to 2 knees, target the far hip. Get your hand to the far hip, put in your thigh pry, and you get a good score. Okay? Now, a very common thing, you hit this move, they go to 2 knees, and they put a leg up. What they're trying to do is turn and face you so that you can't get a score. Okay? Whenever we see this happen, we go to a new target. I come in, and his leg comes up. Okay? When we see this, the far hip is too far away now. It's unrealistic for me to try and get to the far hip. So now when we hit our forward rock, I target the knee. Leg goes up. I target the knee, and I come in here. Okay? Now as Giancarlo scrambles back up to his feet, we're in a position to go up into single leg situation. Okay? From here, so many ways for us to act. I could put this hand on the floor, for example, by circling and pulling. If he resists that, I can circle back in the opposite direction and put his back on the floor and score my 2 points for the takedown. Okay? So if the knee comes off the floor, target the knee. Okay? Now this time, my opponent tripods. We come in on our training partner. He comes in and tripods, high tripod. It's unrealistic to think I'm going to take the back directly from here. Okay, it's too high and it's too far. So again, I hit a forward rock and I target the knee. And again, we come up to our feet. From here, I draw the leg in towards me, like so. Every time I step back, the leg draws towards me. Now I just drop, my hand comes off the lapel, and I go one high hand, one low hand. And we score a nice little takedown, and we pick up our 2 points. So once again, we hit our ukewaza. He goes to a tripod. It's unrealistic to think you're going to get to the far hip now. So instead, we hit a forward roll, and we come up into the single leg situation, targeting the knee. I walk. Every time I walk, his foot comes closer. When I go back, I draw the foot to me. Now, I come down like a pendulum and catch. One above the knee, one below the knee. When he goes to sprawl, there's nothing near. And as a result, we score out 2 points for the takedown. So, 4 ways that my opponent can go down to the mat and different targets. Now, let's look at the interplay between the knee and the hip. We've seen how to target the hip. We've seen how to target the knee. Now let's look at the idea of targeting knee to hip. And this too is very effective. Okay, a guy goes into a tripod. I come in, he tripods. Here. I target the knee and lock, but I stay heavy on the hands. If he tries to face me, my right hand makes it impossible. I put all his weight on his hand. If I'm light with my hand, he can face me. But I'm heavy here. When he goes to face me, it's impossible. Now I use the leg, strong legs. I use the leg to pull my body up, and I put my hand in as a hook here on the far side. When he tries to move away from me now, impossible. We're locked in place, strong body. Now, from here, this knee here penetrates, and I step my foot right over the top, and I score 4 points. Just stay up, stay up. From here, I put my elbow next to his wrist here. I hold on to his collar, and I bring one hand to the other hand. And as a result, I don't score 2 points for the takedown, I score 4 points for the back. So once again, this is how you double your score with ukewaza. In this way, you're doing twice as well as you would with a takedown. Okay? Standing position, play the distance game. He tries to get grips on me, I fight the hands, now we're ready to go. He tripods. I come in, forward rock, I target the knee. He tries to turn and face me, it's difficult. I get my shoulder behind his hamstring, face this way. If my shoulder is in front of his quadricep, he can face me. I get my shoulder behind the hamstring. He goes to face me, impossible. I come up, I throw my foot in. My hand, thigh pry. Thigh pry in here. Okay? Now you got weight on the head through the right hand. You got connection to the hips through the left hand. Okay? Make a strong body. Even if I hang in the air here, I can hang off them. Okay? You're locked in place. Now my left foot replaces my left hand. I have turn and face this way, buddy. Sorry, I'm getting fat in my old age, aren't I, Giancarlo? I put a long hook in and a short hook in here. Now rotate the other way, Giancarlo. It's lucky I've got a strong training partner today. I hold the collar, I bring my elbow to his wrist, and I bring his right hand to his left hand. Now I score 4 points for the takedown. Okay? I love techniques like this. I think they're incredibly applicable to the sport of jiu-jitsu because you double your score. Okay? If you're fighting a powerful judo player and he hits you with the most beautiful drop seoi-nage and elevates you with a highlight reel throw, ass over tits, and you crash into the mat, he scores 2 points. If you get up, away from his pin, get up to your feet, hit him with a simple collar drag, throw 2 hooks in like we just described, you get double his score, you get 4 points. You get twice the points for about 1/4 of the work and 1/10 of the skill level required. Okay? That's efficiency in the standing position. That's the direction I want you going in your first 3 to 6 months of jiu-jitsu in the standing position. You're not going to find anyone on this planet who loves more a beautiful high amplitude throw than me. I love them. I can sit all day with a popcorn and a Coke and watch a highlight reel of international judo high amplitude throws. I'll be the happiest guy on the planet. But when it's time to score in jiu-jitsu, especially in your early days, when you're first starting out standing position, I'm a big believer in low amplitude, very simple, low risk moves like a collar drag, where you can get double the score, 4 points, than you could for even the most beautiful takedown for 2 points. This is a good example of this. When we go to work with our collar drags, you've got to understand the different targets, the far hip, the knee, and the combination of the knee and the hip together, which enables you to double your score and get 4 points instead of 2. You start thinking in these terms, you're going to start being very effective very quickly in the standing position. Now, at this point, you guys have probably figured out I'm a big fan of the collar drag as a method of getting your first takedown points in your standing position journey. But let's be honest here. The collar drag does have one major disadvantage that works against it. It's very predictable, okay? If I have an opponent here in front of me and I get a cross collar grip here and I start guiding the hand across the center line, there's not a lot of throws that go in this position. There are some, okay? Later on in this video, we'll look at the idea, for example, of going all the way through into Kataguruma variations from positions like so, okay? So there are some other options, okay? But in a jiu-jitsu context, 9 times out of 10, when someone takes the hand past some collar grips, you know a collar drag is coming next. So that, I would say, is the single biggest disadvantage to the idea of a collar drag, predictability, because there's not a large number of throws that come out of the idea of taking the hand past and getting the cross collar grip. Now, there are a large number of throws where I start turning my training partner and bringing the hand high, okay? From the hand up elevated like so, there's many throws from this position, okay? But if my opponent's side on and the hand's going across, you're limited now to a collar drag and perhaps a few variations of Kataguruma. That's basically your set of options there, okay? So the main problem here is once your opponent figures out, oh, collar drag, they're all going to start sinking their body weight back and away and pulling the body away. And now, as we come in, this kind of thing happens, where either the guy pulls back so strongly you can't bring him down and bring his hands to the mat, stand up tall, and you can't break him down. Now from here you pretty much got to pull guard, or they do another tactic where they drop to their back leg, okay? They just drop down to their base. So you come in, they do this, okay? And you never really got behind them, you never really got a position on them, okay? Now, don't worry, I'm going to show you how to deal with that later on in this video, but it does happen. But if there's one complaint that I would have about the collar drag, it's the fact that the grip offers a rather limited number of takedowns from that particular grip. Once you guide the hand across the center line from a cross collar grip, your opponent will figure out 8 times out of 10 that means it's going to be a collar drag, and they're going to start resisting, making it hard for you to hit the move. So what we need, and what we're about to go through now, are a bunch of ways to make the collar drag less predictable, okay? If the number one problem is predictability, then we, as developing students, have to find ways to disguise our intention. We have to make the entry into the move less predictable and give our opponent less reaction time to defend himself from what would otherwise be a rather predictable move. And we're going to start looking at that right now. Okay, we've seen that the central problem associated with a collar drag, one of the most important moves for your early development in the standing position, is predictability. Once I take a cross collar grip and pass the hand across the center line, there's only a few moves that come out of this position. Your opponent will intelligently reason to himself in a jiu-jitsu context, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a collar drag, they're going to start defending it. So we have to be able to disguise our intent or cut down on the amount of time from where we go from the grip to the attack. Okay, we've either got to disguise the intent so he doesn't know what we're doing, or we've got to cut down on the time between the grip and the attack. Let's look first at the strategy of cutting down time. There's an ideal that I want you to strive towards. That ideal is grip and attack. Many people in jiu-jitsu have a tendency to get a grip and hang on to it, and hang on to it, and hang on to it, and then finally launch their attack long after their opponent has sensed what their intention is. Okay. Again, I'm not asking you to be the fastest guy in the room, but I am asking you to move quickly and smoothly without procrastination towards your goals. Okay. Again, you don't have to be the fastest guy out there. I'm not asking you to be Usain Bolt, but I am asking you, have a sense of the goal, have a good sense of direction, and don't hang around. Just go to your move. Okay. And the idea of attacking off the grip, you've got something in your favor. Let's come close to the camera, Giancarlo. You're going to face like so. When it's time to get a lapel grip, your two basic options are between straight lapel and cross lapel. I've got some good news for you. The cross lapel grip is the fastest grip in jiu-jitsu. Okay? If I go straight lapel, two motions are involved. First, I've got to get a hand on the cloth. Then I have to put my fingers in and cinch the grip. So there's contact and then cinching, like so. Okay? If my opponent's lapel is here, I can't just cinch my hand, okay? Because my fingers have to catch into the fabric here where there's no opening, okay? I have to get a grip and then work my hand in. That stands in contrast to the opening of the cross lapel grip. Here, I have an opening where my fingers penetrate and I cinch. So the act of penetration and cinching are the same, as opposed to here where I have to first put hands on and then close my hand to fix up the grip. So a cross grip will always be a faster of the two grips. Here I have to go 1, 2. Here I just go 1. Okay? So a cross grip is almost always easier to get. Moreover, when your opponent's gi is tucked, as it often is at the start of a match, so that the cloth is close to the chest, as it often is at the start of a match. And remember, the takedown is usually the first move you attempt, so often the gi is well tucked when you first go out and the match starts. Here, I can only get my thumb inside, okay? And then I have to work to get my 4 fingers set. In this one, I just put 4 fingers in, and the 4 fingers go in immediately. When he goes to break my grip, it's much harder to break a cross grip. Go. It's much harder to break a cross grip than it is to break this grip. Okay? Here, he's fighting my thumb inside. Here, he's fighting 4 fingers inside, and the angle has changed. And as a result, this is a faster grip. The cross grip is a faster grip and is a harder grip to break. Okay? So when we start off in a standing position, quite often what I'll do is I'll play with my opponent's lapels and just loosen them up. Okay, I just use a jab method where I loosen the lapel up. Then, as a result, I can punch the hand in and get my grip. Okay, punch the hand in and get my grip. Now, with regards to my opponent's hand, this grip here is very strong, but it's a little slow. So what I often do is I get the 2 fastest grips, I go cross collar, and I just hold the wrist. Holding a wrist is always faster than holding a cuff, okay? The cuff, I have to cinch it. The wrist grip, I just pass it. All I have to do is make his hand pass my center line, and we're ready to go, okay? So I come out. First, tighten up your lapels. First, I loosen the lapels. I come in, hands up, and we play the game. And I start loosening my opponent's lapels. Now, there's my grips, okay? I normally just go in like so. Once we get the grip, it's straight to work. Fold, forward rock, hand goes in, and we're ready to play. So I'm 53 years old, I'm a cripple, and I'm not very fast, okay? But I don't procrastinate, so it looks like it's all happening quickly. If I can make it look fast, you guys can make it look a lot faster. So once again, we come out, we play the hand fight from this position, move, play the hand fight, get the collars exposed, and then from here, we're ready to go. Now from here, forward rock, hand goes in, and we're behind, and we're scored. Okay? So this is the idea of grip and attack. Don't procrastinate, get your grips, and go. In this way, you cut down the time between starting the move and finishing the move. So the inherent problem of the collar drag, predictability, becomes less of an issue for you. We've seen that the number one problem of the collar drag, the central problem, is the idea that it's somewhat predictable. You get those grips, you get that kind of body movement to the outside angle, your opponent kind of knows what's coming next. There's not many moves that come from that position. So what we need to be able to do is to disguise our intent, okay? Or to shorten the amount of time that passes from the time of the initiation of the move to the completion of the move. One of the best ways to disguise our intent is to put our opponent into a hard grip fight, where he thinks he's engaged in a grip fight, and we use the outcome of the grip fight to go directly into the move. Okay. One of our favorite things to do in a right versus right IL-2 situation is to come out with our training partner. He tries to get a lapel grip, and we intercept our training partner's hand. Okay. We push the hand across, and as you guys know from earlier in the video, what's our big thing here? Motion to the outside. I start circling to the outside. What does he do? He squares up. If he doesn't square up and I move to the outside, I've got his back. Okay? So no one's going to accept that. Everyone knows it's a bad thing to have our back taken. They all start squaring up. As they square up, we take the fastest grip in jiu-jitsu, the cross collar grip. As he goes into square up, his far foot is getting closer to me. Perfect for ukiwaza. So as I form here, I intercept and trip him down to the mat. Now we're in the perfect position to hit the forward rock, get our hips higher than his hips. Thigh pry goes in, hands inside, and we're in perfect position now to lock onto our opponent and win the scramble. Okay? So once again, putting this in the context of the grip fight that we saw earlier in this video. We start off in front of our training partner. I identify he's a right-handed player. I know I'm right-handed, so we go in our minds, we're thinking this is an IL-2 situation. Okay? From right versus right, we play, denying grips, playing distance. Now from here, he goes in to make a grip. I intercept and push it across. As he goes to move with me, I'm going to look for an angle. I'm always looking for the angle. He's always looking to square up. As my opponent goes to square up, we sit, drop, and put the man down to the floor. Now from here, we hit the forward rock. My hips higher than his hips. Thigh pry goes in, hand transfers, and we're behind. We're ready to score our points and win the scramble. Okay, if he stays on his knees, I score 2 points for the takedown. If he tries to get up from here, we'll fight to get our hooks in, and we score 4 points for the back. Either way, we're happy. Let's understand something about this particular game, that whenever we play the angle game, that's the foot I'm looking at. I don't look at the foot, I use my peripheral vision. I always look at my training partner's collarbones, but my peripheral vision picks up his foot. So as I move, when he goes to square up, that foot's getting closer and closer to me. And as that foot gets closer to me, that's what sets up a nice ukiwaza. Now we go through, catch, thigh pry, claw grip, and we're in good position to control and score our points. Okay? So one more time. The grip fight scenario. He comes out, if he makes a grip, I snap it off. If I intercept the grip, that's fine too. All we want is the hand going across the center line. Now I start the angle game. Now I go in, there's my angle, and down we go. Heavy on the head with our cross collar grip. Forward rock. The hand goes in, and we're in business. Okay? Very, very useful way to use grip fighting to set up a nice collar drag. Now, we know the number one or central problem of the collar drag is predictability. You get those grips, it's kind of obvious what's coming next. So we're always looking to create distraction, disguise our intention, or work so quickly that my opponent doesn't have sufficient reaction time to defend. A great way for us to use movement to disguise our intent is where he takes a strong grip, I come through and I get my own grip. Okay? As we dance around with each other, we put our second hand on, hands up, got playing for grips. I just come in and I put my cross grip in place. Now I'm going to set my stance. I push with my cross grip, push on his sleeve cuff, and I pop the grip off. Okay? I'm standing right-handed. My right foot's forward. So I'm going to switch my stance and I'm going to pull him in behind me. As he starts to circle around to face me, I step to the angle, and as you probably guessed from this position, my foot goes across. We've got a nice ukiwaza or collar drag. I put weight on my opponent's head, foot comes in, leg comes up, thigh pry in, and we're in business behind our opponent, ready to attack. So once again, my training partner starts in front of me. We're playing the game up top. My hand comes in, I pop the grip off. Now, I switch my stance. I step, pull. Okay? Off that initial pull, he goes to recover the position. I step so our 3 feet are in a straight line. My foot goes through to the far foot, and there's the drag. Now my forward rock comes up, my hips higher than his hips. Hand goes in as a thigh pry, and we're behind our opponent and ready to attack. Simple way for us to use movement to cause distraction and get around the problem of predictability. Okay, if predictability is the central problem of the collar drag, we need to do something to be able to disguise our intent and get the move to work against an opponent who knows it's one of our favorite moves. So far, everything we've done has been out of Iotsu situations. We're both right-handed and we work from this position. Okay, but I should be able to hit my collar drags regardless of whether we're Iotsu or, if he switches stance, Kenkiyotsu. Okay, I should be effective in both cases. Let's say my opponent go back. I come out and start to look at my grips in this position. One thing I can often do is do my grip fighting from an opposite stance. I do most of my throwing right-handed. I'm a right-handed thrower in most cases. But I often do my grip fighting from left-handed stances. It kind of throws my opponent off. He thinks he's fighting a left-hander, and he grip fights for the left-handed situation. Usually what they do is they go straight to assert a power hand. It would be risky for him to assert a power hand in an Iotsu situation. Okay? He's creating situations now where I can go in and attack the sleeve in various kinds of ways. Okay? There's a whole host of attacks I can use off this position. But when we stand Kenkiyotsu, he's pretty confident to reach and assert that power hand right from the start. Okay? When I see this, I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to come up and take a 4-finger grip right here on my training partner's sleeve cuff. I'm going to come through underneath so that my index knuckle touches the apple of his hand. Don't be down here somewhere. Make sure there's contact. Now, as he makes a strong grip, all I'm going to do is turn in this direction here, and I'm going to pull my own lapel, snap his grip off. Now what have we got? I've got his power hand under my control. I start switching my stance, so I become right-handed again. I broke the grip, left-handed. Then I stand right-handed. As he goes to pull his arm back and recover, I follow into the cross grip. From a situation like this, it's an easy thing for me to be encircling. Off that circle, I line the 3 feet up in a straight line, and then from here, I go straight into the move. Now, as always, forward rock, thigh pry goes in, and we're in business. So once again, he's right-handed. Instead of me coming out right-handed, he comes out right, I stand left against him. As I come towards the man, I give him what appears to be a gift. I come through, 4-finger grip, break the grip off. Right from here, I switch back to my real stance, the right-handed stance. I come in, I get my grip, I start moving the man. Off movement, outside angle, and down we go to the mat. Forward rock, hand goes in, and score. It's a very simple way for us to attack out of a Kenkyotsu situation and a Kenkyotsu grip break. We should be effective in both the Kenkyotsu and the Iotsu situation with our favorite throws. If we're going to make the collar drag one of our favorite throws, I should be able to throw in both situations. Most of the time, we have two right-handed athletes. We'll go right-hand collar, line up, and attack. Okay. What if we have a situation like so? Okay, where I have an opponent standing righty and I'm lefty, or this situation develops. We'll work it from this position here. It's well a good way for us to work. Okay. From here, I'm going to come out. I'm going to hand fight. My opponent's hands are in place like so. Okay. Now, in one motion from the hand fight, I'm going to go through and just jab my hand directly in. It's easy to do because, as we saw earlier in this video, the cross lapel grip is the fastest grip to get in jiu-jitsu. You can just fence your hand directly in. You just throw it like a jab, and it's there. Okay. You don't have to go 1, 2. You just go 1. Okay. So from a situation where my opponent's hands are up, we play the position. I just go straight in. Now all I do is I put my hand outside his hand. Okay. So I go in, boom, and just land. Right off that grip, I just step to the outside and I block the opposite foot. So it's like an ukiwaza. And as a result, we're able to go straight into our favorite position. Forward rock, hand goes into a thigh pry, and we're ready to play. So once again, we come out, opposite stance. It's like so. I attack the back collar. He's got a forward collar and a back collar. I go across to the back collar. I normally go one hand first. It's usually faster. So I come in and grip. Now I take my body to the outside angle and my hand blocks his. I usually don't bother to grab the cloth. I normally just block with my hand. Now all I do is I aim for my training partner's far foot and I sit right into the ukiwaza. Now, forward rock, thigh pry, hand goes in. He goes to move out of here and you're over his hips and in a position to score. If I keep one knee down, I get 2 points. If I see him trying to get up, and we roll him over and get 2 hooks in, I get 4 points. They're both great outcomes, obviously. So one more time. Kenkyotsu situation. He stands lefty, I stand righty. From here, we come out in hand fight. I take my hand and I go straight in. Right off that motion, it's a pretty easy thing for us to generate the kind of motion we need to drag our opponent straight down to the mat. Now we go through, lock, and score. If you want to be really effective with your collar drags, you've got to be able to mix it up with other moves so that your opponent doesn't know what your real intention is. Because we've seen that at the end of the day, the biggest problem associated with collar drags is predictability. Once you get those grips, everyone knows what you want to do, especially if you hit the move successfully a couple of times. One of my favorite things to do is to use a snap down method that we saw earlier in this video. The snap down method is one where I control my training partner's sleeve cuff, I get the cross collar, and I start to move out to an angle and I use a half sasai. Normally, sasai is performed on the far leg. In a half sasai, I use it on the near leg. Now, don't just kick your training partner's leg. Use the sole of the foot and pull him forward so the weight goes onto the toes. If he's on his heels and you kick his leg, nothing's going to happen. He's going to hurt his leg. But if I put his weight on his toes, then when I kick the leg, it comes up and he stumbles. So I need the head going forward as I use the sole of my foot. I never kick with the shoelaces. This is Muay Thai. Okay? This is Jiu-Jitsu. We use the sole of the foot. Never go in and kick. This is kickboxing. Okay? We come in and block like so, using the sole of the foot. When I bring the head forward, we get a stumble. Okay? You can snap people down. If I get a partial stumble out of my opponent, that's all I'm looking for. I don't have to stumble them all the way to the floor. If I put his hands on the floor, I'll take his back. But what we often get under these circumstances is something like this. I go out, I get a hold of my training partner, and I come in and I get a little stumble. Okay, like that. That's all we're looking for. If I can stumble my opponent, I can take my opponent down. Okay, it's one of the big lessons of this video. So as we come out with our training partner, he comes on, gets a grip, and snap that grip off just like so. Okay, from here I stumble him with half to side, just like so. As he goes to recover, that's what we're looking for. That's the perfect time to hit him. When he's out of balance, he's not ready to defend himself. He's thinking about, let me recover from this aside. That's when I go in for the collar drag. And as a result, we go in and we get our score. Remember, guys, if predictability is the issue, I have to stop from predicting what I'm doing. So I create an illusion with a give and attack. You snap his grip off. I start playing a game where I can get to my grips. Now I take everything in this direction and stumble him. As he goes into his recovery, that's what we're looking for. We bring everything up and score. Okay? So this is a very simple, very easy way for us to create a distraction, to take away the problem of predictability when we go to work. It's a nice way to combine collar drag with a different move to get greater effectiveness. Now we're looking at overcoming the central problem of the collar drag, predictability, and we're looking at the idea of combining it with other moves so our opponent thinks there's other threats going on. And as a result, we can start to get to the move we actually intended to get all along, which is our collar drag. Now, earlier in this video, we spent some time looking at the idea of a seoi snap. And we differentiate it from a seoi nage. Seoi nage is a true throw where we lift our opponent and throw them from underneath. Seoi snap, we just snap them down to the mat from a situation where we're higher than our opponent. So mechanically, it's a little different from a seoi nage. The basic idea was that from right versus right, we took a hold of our training partner's sleeve cuff and took it off. Can't hit a seoi snap if it's connected to us. So from a situation where we lock up with our training partner like so, we'll create distraction, snap the grip off. Now I come in and I get my cross grip, just like so. Now in a seoi snap, I need his hand here. Okay? For a collar drag, I need his hand down here. So they're very different. Here I need the hand low across. For a seoi snap, I need the hand outside and high. Okay? So the direction of the control hand is completely different. We can use that to create distraction. I'm going to move away from my opponent and I'm going to attempt a seoi snap that fails. So I move, I create the wave effect, and then from here, I try, and he goes down to his hands and knees. As he comes up, I'm already passing it back down. As he comes up, I'm already passing the hand to the inside. I come up on this leg first. Don't come up on the wrong leg. He grabs your leg, and it's a problem. So we keep this leg as the one that stands up first. As we go to stand up together, I come to the outside angle. Now I just sit and put him down. Forward rock, hand goes in, and we're in business. So once again, from a situation where we start off, right versus right. I snap his grip off. From here, I find angle, I get my cross lapel grip, and I take the hand to the outside, signifying the beginnings of a seoi snap. We generate a wave motion, like so. As I come up, I drop, and I try to throw him, but he's a good man, he's a stud, doesn't go down easily. So you know, first things first, his hand goes to the inside. I stand up with the outside leg, so that even as we stand, I have angle already. Now I'm ready to go. There's no reason to hesitate. There's the lapel drag. Forward rock, hand goes up, and score. So, in a competitive situation, and in we go. And this is a great way to combine two moves together where our opponent's control hand goes in opposite directions, which does a great job of concealing your true intent until the last second. Earlier in this video, we saw the idea of a 2-on-1 collar snap. We saw from right versus right situations we can come out and put on what we call a reverse power hand on our training partner. Normally, if I'm standing right foot forward, it's normally the right hand that becomes my power hand. But it's risky for me to reach with a power hand, right versus right, and leave an unprotected power hand that can be a means of being thrown. So very often what we do is we put in a reverse power hand where I stand right, but I grip left. This shuts down my opponent's lead shoulder. If he went to throw in this direction, I control the inside space of the shoulder. It'd be difficult. Okay, it's hard for me even to get a throwing grip. Under these circumstances, I now extend and feed the second hand in. So I have two hands on him and he has no hands on me. Okay, that's what we're looking for in any snap down. I don't want to try snap downs when he's connected to my lapels. Then that connection makes it impossible to snap him down to the floor. I want to get his hands on the mat. So I want situations where I have hands on him and he has no hands on my lapels. Okay, so we're going to come out right versus right. From the grip fight situation, we're here, I shoot my reverse power hand on. Now I open the lapel, my second hand comes in, so my two hands are very close together. Don't have your hands apart, close together like so. Now I step out to the side and I pull everything to my right side while my foot clips my opponent like so. Of course, he's going to bounce back up to his feet. If he doesn't bounce back up to his feet, I get the score. So of course he's going to bounce back up to his feet. Now I just take my hand and I put it on the outside of the elbow or the wrist. I don't need to grab the cloth, and as a result, I'm able to hit my drag. Now I hit my forward rock. I put in the thigh pry. My hand goes in behind, and when we go to scramble for points here, I'm going to get the either 2 points for the takedown or 4 points for the back. Either way, I'm happy. So once again, right versus right situation. I measure, I understand from here, this is right versus right. So I start playing accordingly. I'm leery about committing to a power hand with my, like so, right versus right. He can throw now, cause problems for me, okay? So I come out with a reverse power hand. From reverse power hand, I open, second hand feeds. I step and everything goes to my right hand side so that this foot becomes light. We get our quick snap. I put my hand on his tricep. Now in one motion, I'm in perfect position just to sit and send him on by. Okay. I put a forward rock. Thigh pry goes in. And now we're in perfect position to dominate the scramble. As I said, guys, I'm not asking you to be the fastest guy in the gym. I'm living proof of that. I'm probably the slowest guy in the gym. But I am asking you not to procrastinate. Don't procrastinate with grips. When I hit this move and he goes down to the floor, when he comes up, I don't bother to grab his cloth. It takes too long. I just put the hand on the tricep so that when I step, I'm in perfect position now to send everything through and guide him by. Okay? Why take the extra step of gripping the cloth? It has no effect. It's going to slow you down. No need. So just guide him by, and there's your lapel drag. So, first, distance. I look at my opponent. He's right-handed. I'm right-handed. This is an IL2 situation. That's my mindset. I'm reading him. I look at his stance. He goes down low. I know now he can only pull guard or shoot for my legs. That's all there is. Okay. If he stands tall, now there's a bunch of things he could do. He could try and grip me and throw me. He could pull guard. He could do many things from here. But if he comes down in a jigger type, we know what's next. Okay. From here, I come out. I go in reverse power hand. I put on my second hand. I pull everything by and snap him down to the floor. Off the snap, I just hold the tricep. No need to grab the cloth. Now I just take everything in this direction here and send it on by. Now I take my foot, step, and in position. Okay. Guys, I'm going to give you a little piece of advice that I didn't show you earlier, and I probably should have shown you earlier. I'm trying to cut down the number of steps that you have to make in order to get the move to work. Remember, in Jiu-Jitsu, you don't have to be the fastest guy. You can sometimes just be the guy that cuts out unnecessary steps. And so this creates an illusion where a slow man looks like he's fast. If a move takes 10 steps for a fast man to accomplish, he will be outperformed by a slow man who only takes 2 steps to perform the same move. Okay? The other guy might be faster on paper, but in practice, the guy who takes fewer steps is effectively the faster guy, even if physically he's slower. Sometimes when I hit a lapel drag, I don't even slide my foot towards my opponent's foot. I'll show you what I mean in this sequence. When I snap my opponent down, and he goes to the mat. If I took my step to the outside and then aimed my foot across, that's an extra step. So sometimes what I do is I just keep this foot stationary. I don't even step 1, step 2. I just go from here, 1. So instead of 1, 2, I just go 1. Then all I do is I just squat, strong body, make your body like you don't want to fall down. I just squat and I just turn my foot. And that becomes the lapel drag. So I take out an unnecessary step, okay? You don't always have to be the guy that slides through. You don't always have to do that, okay? Sometimes it's faster from situations where I'm just like so, just to go from where I am. And instead of stepping, I just turn my knees. Off that knee turn, I just put my hand outside and I just knee turn, I fall back, 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 and then from here, I send them on by. Now I hit the forward rock, the hand comes in, and we're in place. So you don't always have to be the guy that goes 1, 1, 2. Sometimes you just go 1. And then I strong body. Then I just open everything in this direction and send them on by. So you cut out a step, got a faster drag. So even though you didn't get faster as a person, you took out a step. And as a result, you became faster as an athlete performing a given move. Okay, one of the greatest skills that you can develop in Jiu-Jitsu is the skill of turning failure into success. Please understand that in Jiu-Jitsu, it's a competitive combat sport. You know a certain number of moves, he knows most of those moves. So when you go to perform a given move, you're performing that move upon someone who knows what the move is and generally knows the counters to the moves. So it gets pretty tough to hit the moves on people, okay? If he didn't know what I was attempting, Jiu-Jitsu would be a very easy game, okay? I'm sure you've all had the experience of rolling with one of your friends who literally has never had a Jiu-Jitsu lesson. It's ridiculously easy. Then you go back with your friends in the gym and everything seems incredibly difficult because they know exactly what you're attempting. So realistically, if we attempt 10 given moves in a Jiu-Jitsu session, you can realistically expect 8 to 9 of them to fail. Learning to overcome failure is thus one of the most important skills you can develop in the sport. That's what's going to distinguish you from the other people in the gym. When they fail, they stop. But I want you, when you fail, to go straight to your next move. Let's look at an example here with Osotogari. Now, most of you learned Osotogari in your first day in the gym, and you probably learned it something like this, okay? Where you start, both of you with a grip on each other, and you step outside of your training partner's body and bring your leg and hip up to your training partner's leg. And you learned that if we touch chest to chest in a position like this, and we pull our shoulder and chest with his shoulder and chest, then from here we can go and reap our training partner's leg and put him down. It's probably what you learned on your first day in Jiu-Jitsu. Then when you learned that, you probably thought to yourself, hey, that seems like a pretty good takedown. I think I could do that on somebody. Then when it was time to do standing position competitively with a resisting opponent, something awful happened. Your opponent got stiff resistant arms on you. You had the same grip on him that he had on you, and every time you tried to step, he just pushed, and you never got close to him, and you felt like every time you tried to reach his leg, it was a million light years away, and every time you connected to his leg, he just pushed you, and you fell backwards. It was a disaster, okay? Osotogari is, if you don't know what you're doing, it's a difficult throw to hit. In general, I'm going to encourage you guys later in this video, when we start to look at a Sotogari, to do a game plan where we never let him put a power hand on us, because that power hand stiffens up and makes it very hard for me to get, relax your arm, the chest-to-chest contact that we want for successful Sotogaris. Okay? In general, the easiest Sotogaris to hit are situations where I keep his hand down like so he can't make contact with us. Now, one of my favorite ways to hit an Sotogari is out of a cross grip, here. Normally, a Sotogari is done from conventional straight grip and a grip like so. Okay, if you look at a textbook of Sotogari, it's usually done in situations like so. Okay, we're going to do it here and here. Okay, I'm going to step not forwards and reap like so, but rather I'm going to put my right foot in front of his right foot, and we're going to take everything here. I'm going to bring my left foot behind my right, and I'm going to hook onto my training partner's leg. Now we're going to hop up towards our foot, and we just throw them straight down to the mat. That's a much more realistic way to hit a Sotogari. Okay, we're going to be looking at a Sotogari in a lot of detail in our next video, but for today, that's enough for today on a Sotogari. You get successful with a Sotogari, everyone's going to start doing this. He goes for a grip. We snap our training partner's grip off. We come in like so. When I come in for it, he's going to step back and away, and we miss the opportunity. Okay? So even if I make a good contact, he steps out. Okay? Happens all the time. You make contact, you get to a leg, but you can't get the kind of forces necessary, and he steps out. When we see that, we just step across our training partner, and from here, we send them right through it. So a failed Sotogari becomes a successful collar drag. As always, forward rock, hand goes in, and we win the scramble. So a failed Sotogari for 2 points leads into a successful collar drag for 2 points. First one failed, the more difficult, complex throw failed, and a simpler one took over. Right versus right situation. I'm looking at my opponent, I'm reading him. Okay, from here, I get his power hand. I get a hold of my training partner, I generate motion. From here, I attempt a Sotogari. I step my foot to his foot. I try after the hook and he steps out. Now I step 1, 2, and take him right on by. From here, forward rock, open the space for the thigh pride, hands go in and score. So this is a realistic way to take a failed Sotogari, a modified Sotogari, and make it work for a collar drag. Excellent way to disguise our intention and make our collar drags a little less predictable. Now, another way to disguise our intention with a collar drag is out of a failed Kouchigari. Kouchigari refers to any situation where I have hands on an opponent, and from here, I separate his feet and I hook the back of his foot, come close to the camera, turn back to the camera. I take the sole of my foot and I hook here behind his Achilles tendon, and I pull in the direction his toes are pointing to pull the foot away and place him down towards the mat. Okay, we don't use, well, I'm not going to say we never use, sometimes we do use the shoelaces, but most of the time we don't use the shoelaces, we use the sole of the foot, and we actively reap our training partner's leg away. Okay, as we create a reaping effect, like he's slipping on a banana peel, we create a pushing effect that puts our man down to the floor. That's the basic idea behind Kouchigari. Most of the time, it's done with a straight collar grip and a sleeve. Most of the time, we square our training partner up, and I create a situation where I push the head and I push the hand into the leg. So we get a good pushing service, push back into me. So I'm trying to push everything over that leg. That creates a situation where only his heel is on the mat. So there's very little friction with the mat, and as a result, we can clip it away. If I don't do that, and his foot is planted on the mat, there's so much friction with the mat that I can never move his foot. And you see people trying Kouchigari and nothing happens, okay? But if I take everything onto the heel, now no friction with the mat, and down he goes, okay? So that's the basic idea of a Kouchigari. Now, one of my personal favorite Kouchigari attacks is a cross grip Kouchi, where from a right versus right situation, I come out with my training partner, and then from here I come in and I get my grip. Now I start circling and pulling. Now I use a one-handed Kouchi where I pass his foot to my hand. And as a result, I put him out. I love this stroke. It's so simple, so effective. Now, we're going to be looking a lot at Kouchigari later on in our subsequent videos. Now is not the time, but that's the basic idea behind Kouchi. Kouchigari combines incredibly well with collar drags. Okay? So from here, we start off. I come out righty. I observe my training partner. He's right-handed. So in my mind, I'm thinking this is IOC situation, right versus right. I formulate my plans, create my posture according to what I see. Okay? I don't want to be too greedy and start reaching here and give him a free attack. So I come in with a reverse power hand, pull him out, and place my cross grip in. Okay, so use a lapel feed to get what I want. Now, once you get a grip, start moving. So I circle and pull. I come in for Kouchi, and he steps out, and I miss it. Now I just take my hand to his elbow. I step across my training partner, and as we talked about before, I sync my levels, and everything goes across to the other side. I hit a forward rock, hand goes in, and we win the scramble. So once again, the Kouchi we'll be looking at in a lot of detail in subsequent videos. One of my favorite attacks. So low risk, so easy, magical stuff. But like any move, you try it 10 times, you're probably going to fail 5, 6, 7 times. Okay, so you've got to have a follow-up. So collar drag is one of the best follow-ups. We come in, we're hand fighting. We're hand fighting. We come in, we get our initial grip. I could go here. It's not 100% wrong because it's a little safer on this side, but I typically go reverse power hand and make it feed. As soon as we get to that, we go movement. I come in, I try hard for Kouchigari, he steps out. Now I just make my step across the man. I put my hand outside his elbow. I make my step, I squat, and everything goes by the other side. As a result, we're in perfect position. So in a combat situation, and in we go. A very effective way to disguise your true intent with a failed Kouchi into a collar drag. Okay, now we're looking at the idea of creating success out of failure. Our understanding is that in the sport of Jiu-Jitsu, we know the basic moves of Jiu-Jitsu. He knows the basic moves of Jiu-Jitsu, the most popular moves. It's going to be hard to perform the most well-known moves on someone who knows what they are and knows the counters. Okay, and that's most of the time when we go out to compete or to spar with our training partners. So we have to be able to accommodate failure on the understanding that most of the time when we attempt to move, it will initially fail. And we need to be able to work off failure to get to success. One of the best adapted takedowns to the sport of Jiu-Jitsu, as we looked at it earlier in this video, is the ankle pick. I'm a huge fan of the use of the ankle pick. It's a relatively simple move and very, very effective in Jiu-Jitsu competition. We saw the idea that if our opponent's in a kind of a bent over stance, this is the perfect time to go in for ankle picks. We saw the idea of tying up our training partner's lead hand, and from here I'm going to use a cross grip method. I could go straight grip for ankle pick, but here I'm using cross grip, and I'm going to switch my stance. So I start dancing out to the side, and I create a situation where I switch my stance. Now from here, I come down towards my training partner, and I come in and catch. I put his head right over his foot, and I pull in the direction that his toes are pointing, and as a result, we can hit a nice pick down to the mat. So it's the basic ankle pick as we looked at it earlier in the video, and this time we're using a cross collar grip. I'm sure you can all guess why. Great way for us to work. Now, once you get a reputation as someone who's good with an ankle pick, you're going to get people stepping out and moving away from you. You're going to run into failure, okay? So if we come out towards a training partner, say he gets a grip on me, for example, we snap his grip off, we go in and we start that action of lining up like so. I come in and I attempt the ankle pick and he steps out. I'm going to put my foot up in front of my training partner. I'm going to put my second foot out here and I'm going to put my hand on his elbow. And as you probably guessed from there, we just sit, pull, and send the man by. Now, as always, we hit the forward rock, we put the hand thigh pry in, and we're in position now to win the scramble and get to our points. So once again, we start off in front of a training partner, standing up tall for this one. He comes in, gets his grip, we snap his grip off. We start playing the game like so. I put in my cross grip, From here, I switch my stance, try and fail. I put my foot up in the center. My second foot comes out wide. My hand goes on his elbow. I don't even bother to stretch and extend. I just turn and send him on by. Forward rock, thigh brine, and score. In a competitive setting, I come out, right versus right. I will deny him the power hand. We push it aside, dance, dance, hand goes in, dance, switch, step. From here I come in, fail, send him on by, and score. That's a very realistic way for us to use a failed ankle pick to go on and succeed with the collar drag. We're looking at the idea that in a jiu-jitsu situation, I know a certain set of moves, he knows a certain set of moves. In 9 cases out of 10, he's probably going to know the same set of moves that I know. He's also going to know the counters. And so as a result, we run into a lot of failure. Your ability to succeed in the sport is largely bound up with your ability to get over failure and go on to success. One of the most common manifestations of failure is an initial drag where you don't control the scramble and the guy gets back up. You could just quit. You could just let go and start all over again. That would be failure that leads to nothing. Or you could have a different mindset where you hit a collar drag, you fail to control the scramble, you get back up to your feet, and you immediately hit a second collar drag. Same move done twice. And the second one succeeds where the first one failed. This often happens in competitive situations. You must become very good at this if you're going to call yourself a master of the collar drag. So we come out towards our training partner. From here, we engage in the usual kind of hand fight situation. Now, we go in and we score an initial cross grip on our training partner. I position my hand to the outside and I hit my first drag. My training partner goes down to the mat. It succeeds in that respect, but he bounces up and comes back up to his feet. I come out outside leg first. I never come up inside leg and give him an easy ankle pick, and now I'm in trouble. Always it's outside leg first. From the outside leg, I come up, I hit the same move a second time. This time I do a better job of finding the hip, or if he's very fast and puts the knee up, I come up and I put my arm here around his leg. As he goes up to recover to his feet, we find ourselves in a situation where now we're ready to put his hands down to the mat. If I get his hands down to the mat, I circle this way and I bring him down, hands down to the mat. We're going to create a situation where it's pretty easy for us to throw our hooks in. My knee goes in behind, and now from this position, I throw the second hook over the top. I take his hand, cross the other hand, and we get our score. Okay? So once again, we're looking at the idea of atoning for an initial failure. Okay, it's right versus right situation. We come out, fighting for our initial grips. I go in, I get a first grip. From here, I try an initial move that fails. As we come up, outside leg in place, inside leg comes in, he puts a leg up, we catch, and we're in business. From here, I put his hands down to the mat. Elbow deep with my arm, I step, his hands go down to the floor. Now, we're in a good position to put our body over our opponent's body. My leg comes in, second leg goes over, I bring his two hands in together, and we're in business. In this way, you can make up for an initial failure and go on to success. Now, one of the great features of the collar drag is something that very few people ever talk about. This is the idea that it works incredibly well during the interface between standing position and the ground. All of you guys know a collar drag can be a very useful move down on the ground. So if we're working open guard, for example, my opponent's in the standing position, he gets deep-hand grips. This is a perfect time for us to employ a simple collar drag to put his hands on the mat. If he's on two knees, this is the perfect time for us to push our training partner's knee out and expose his back with a collar drag. If we're working from, say, a sleeve lapel open guard situation where supine, just like so, from here, it's not a difficult thing for us to start coming up into a standing position by pushing on our training partner. He goes to back away from us, This too can be a great situation for us to work. We put our hand down on the floor, drag, and bring the man by. Okay, so collar drags are a highly successful and relatively simple move to use anytime we're down on the floor. And of course, as we've seen in this video, they're very good in the standing position. But what very few people talk about is there a magical move in the interface between the two positions, that gray zone where we're not really standing and not really down on the floor either. Okay, let's understand, as we saw earlier in the video, one of the rules of jiu-jitsu. If my opponent is in front of me, standing, like so, and there's a little bit of distance, I might elect to come up from bottom position. Let's say my opponent starts coming in, he's got a foot forward, like so, and we're working from this position, and I elect to come up to my knees, and from here, I go in and attempt an ankle pick. He goes to step off, and from here, I come up to my feet. There's a 3-second period where it's still considered to be ground combat. If 3 seconds goes by and I hit a takedown, it's now considered standing combat and I score the takedown points. Okay? In that 3-second period, we can often use collar drags. So let's say, for example, I was playing in situations like so. And then from here, the untanglement begins and he goes stepping back and away from me. And from here, I come up. As he backs away from me, I hope to get away from my guard, backing away, we come up, we plant our foot, and then right from here, we hit a simple collar drag, somewhere between standing and ground. It wasn't really standing combat yet, 3 seconds hadn't passed, but we're in a perfect position now to go in and get our hand in place and win, okay? Same thing can happen if he's playing guard. A lot of times, your opponent won't want to play bottom position. Maybe he feels more comfortable in the standing position or top position, and he might want to come up off the floor, okay? So I'm trying to pass his guard, he can start standing up on me. When he goes to stand up, that's the perfect time to use that interface to go in and get in this case, it won't be a score, but it'll be a damn good position from where we can score, okay? So my point to you is that there's gray zones somewhere between standing combat and ground combat, which are usually differentiated in jiu-jitsu by a 3-second period of time. In these situations, you may not always score by the official point scoring system of jiu-jitsu, but you will get a damn good position on your opponent's back. And once you get there, you can definitely start scoring. So attacking the gray zone with the cross collar drag is a very useful way for us to gain advantage in that gray zone between the feet and the floor, inside that 3-second period between standing combat and ground combat. So if I'm down and there's distance between us, okay, this might be a time for us to start coming up and catching. Okay, as we go to back away, I come up, I grab the outside of the elbow, I hit my collar drag, and now we're in perfect position to gain advantage down on the floor. From situations like this, it won't be hard for us to go in and start getting scores. Conversely, if I need to use the collar drag to keep someone down who's coming up on me, this might well be the perfect time for us to hit it. Again, we come through and find ourselves in a better position than we were previously. So using the collar drag in the interface between standing combat and ground combat is a great way for you to gain advantage in these gray zones of jiu-jitsu. There's an advantage to collar dragging as a form of takedown, which doesn't get discussed much, which is very important when it's time to actually start taking tough people down in a competitive situation. Most throws in the standing position, the overwhelming majority of athletes can only perform on one side of their body, okay? So you'll have athletes who have a very strong Ippon Seoinage on the right-hand side. But if you ask them to throw it left, it's a little more difficult for them. They might have a strong Ogoshi on the right-hand side, but not have a very good one on the left. Most of us have a preferred side, and we have throws that we do well on our right side and throws that we do well on our left side. One of the great advantages of collar dragging is that it's such an intrinsically simple throw with so little movement involved that most athletes have no problems developing a strong collar drag on both sides of the body. So it becomes an ambidextrous throw. This is very unusual. As I said, most people, for most throws, can only do it on one side of their body, at least with power and conviction. They might be able to do a poor version on the other side, but when it's time to throw someone who's very tough, they have one side that they do it on, and they can't do it on the other side. In the case of the collar drag, it's pretty easy to train ourselves to become ambidextrous. Okay, I'm right-handed and most of my opponents are right-handed. So in the majority of cases, I typically do a right-handed collar drag. So if we come out with our training partner, he gets a grip on me, we might snap his grip off, dance, set up our cross grip, and then from here, go into a right-handed collar drag like so. Okay, I can also do right-handed collar drags out of a left-handed grip. Okay, so I fake my stance, he's right-handed, and I intentionally and deceitfully put my left side forward. So when he comes out and takes a lapel, I peel the grip off, then I come back to the right-handed situation, and now I've converted to right hand, and we hit our lapel drag. Okay, but I'm also fully capable of hitting a left-hand collar drag. It's such an easy takedown overall that it's pretty easy to learn to do it on both sides of your body. Unlike, say, for example, a Morote Seoinage, which most people can only do on one side of their body with real power. Even on my hip replacement side, it's not a difficult thing for me to take an opponent and then just take my hand through to the cross grip position. Now, as I hit my outside step, I put my hand on the back of my training partner's shoulder, and it's not a difficult thing for us now to aim across our training partner's body and hit the same motion to the opposite side. Just like before, we focus on that rock, which enables us to come up and put our hand in and get to our score. So what I want to see you guys doing is a simple drill where we have a square training partner in front of us like so. He bends over, and we're just going to practice the skill of going from one side across to the other. Here, I cut his body in half and get that outside step. And after a while, you develop the sense that you can go right-handed and put the man down. You get back up, and from here, you can go left-handed and put the man down with equal ease on the opposite side. Okay? I want you guys to develop the ability to create the collar drag into an ambidextrous throw. This is going to make it much easier for you to get the breakthrough. If your opponent knows you can only hit the move on one side, as we said earlier, the great problem with the collar drag is it's a little bit predictable. It's this one big problem. So if my opponent knows I can only do it right-handed, he may even switch his stance on me. Okay? That's going to make it a little bit harder for me to hit. Not impossible, but a little bit harder. Okay? So I want to have that ability when he switches stance to go in and hit the same move just as effectively on the other side. Okay? And if I can do that, then it's pretty easy for us to get those scores on either side of the body. We hit the same forward rock, same thigh pry goes in, and same score. It's not a difficult thing to do. Always remember, guys, one of the great virtues of the collar drag is that of all the various takedown methods out there, it's mechanically the easiest one to perform. It's a relatively low skill move. It's one you practice every day down on the ground. There's no reason why you can't do it on both sides in the standing position. So unlike most throws, I'm going to recommend to you, work this one on both sides. Okay? I wouldn't say that with Morote Seoinage. I wouldn't say that with Uchimata. With most throws, I wouldn't say it. But this throw, I will. Get good on both sides. You'll double your chances. I want to talk to you about a really important theme that starts to bring together some of the concepts that we've talked about throughout this video so far. In particular, the relationship between the single leg, the back, and the collar drag. I've been trying to portray to you the idea that the collar drag is one of the easier takedowns in the standing position, and it's the most likely one that you'll start your scoring journey in the standing position with. I want you to put a lot of time and effort into this move. It's going to pay off, and you'll be taking people down to the ground, successfully scoring points, I believe, within 3 to 6 months as a totally workable, realistic goal. Okay? Unlike, say, for example, Morote Seoinage, where it's going to take you a while to start throwing people successfully with that. It's not going to be an overnight thing. There's a strong relationship between the single leg, the back, and the collar drag. With some of this we've seen already in the progress we've made. I want to really make this clear now. Earlier in the video, we looked at the single leg by itself. We looked at the idea that we typically do it from a straight lapel grip. And if I had a straight lapel grip and an outside step, it was pretty easy for me to go into my training partner's legs and get elbow deep around the knee. Then from here, we came up off the floor and we used this collar grip to control our training partner's upper body while we controlled his lower body with our legs. And from here, we went for our various forms of takedown. Okay. We can also hit single legs out of a collar drag using not a straight grip, but a cross grip. Now, this has a bad side to it. You don't control the far shoulder, but it has a good side. And that good side is the idea that from here I can make this hand touch the floor. Okay, I get elbow deep on my training partner. I step behind him and I circle. Even if he puts a hand on my back and grabs the cloth, I can force his hand down to the mat and get him out of balance in this direction. Okay, so don't be intimidated if he grabs the cloth of your back. Okay, the only time I wouldn't try this is if he grabbed my belt. That would make me go in other directions. Okay, so if I have single leg with a cross grip and he grabs the cloth of my gi at the back, I can force his right hand to the mat by coming in elbow deep, stepping behind him, stepping back, and forcing the hand to the mat. If he's long and tall and he grabs my belt in this situation, it might be more difficult. Okay, I might still be able to get his hand down to the mat. It could happen. I step behind and force it down, but it could also result in both of us toppling to the mat. As he holds on tight, we both fall. Okay. Now, when we do this, we get a chance to go from the single leg, which scores 2 points, to the back, which scores 4 points. So obviously, if you have a choice between a takedown and taking the back, you always go with the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a collar drag. We're going to come out towards our training partner and go into our usual grip fighting situation. I go through and get my grip. I come to the side and get my angle. I get my cross grip in place and I bring him into position. He puts the leg up. Okay, he doesn't want me to win this ground. He wants to protect his back. If I can't get the back, I'm going to go for the single leg. So I go in and capture my training partner's leg. From here, we come up to standing position. He puts a hand over my back and goes to defend himself. From here, I step behind his support foot and I step back and I force his hands to the mat. Now, I get heavy here. So if he tries to bring his hands off the mat, it's very difficult. My hand comes through as a thigh pry. Let's turn this way. My hand comes through as a thigh pry and hooks onto the hamstring muscle so that I'm connected to Giancarlo. When he tries to take his hands off the mat, it's hard because there's weight over his head. When he tries to move on the mat, it's difficult because I'm holding the thigh pry. Now, even if my body came off the floor, you're connected to him through your hand. Okay, he tries to walk on his hands and knees, and I'm stuck to him. Now it's pretty easy for us to tilt our body and start throwing our legs in as hooks. Now from here, I bring his hand across to the other hand, and now we're down on the floor, ready to strangle, and we're 4 points richer. So, right versus right situation. We come out towards our man, he comes in, makes a grip. We come down, we snap the grip off. We start dancing, my hand goes in. I step to the outside angle, I send him on by. He does a good job of protecting his back. If his knee stays on the floor, there's no reason why I can't cover the hips and take the back. So he takes his knee off the mat. I switch targets to the knee. I come in and capture. As he goes up to his feet, we end up here. I step behind him, step back, put his hands on the mat, and throw in the thigh pry. From the thigh pry, I bring my body across to the opposite side and lock. Now I bring his two hands together, and we're in perfect position to go for our strangles, and we're 4 points richer than we were a second ago. And this way, you can work the interface between the collar drag, the single leg, and the back. Instead of being happy scoring 2 points for a takedown, You get happier by scoring 4 points for the back.